Yeah, look, we bailed out the banks to an enormous extent. They haven't repaid society for that bailout in any substantial way. In fact, they persecuted a lot of mortgage holders who were in arrears and dispossessed many of them from their homes. We can't have a repeat of that. And the mortgage break ending opens up the prospect of that happening again. And we were told by government spokespeople today, I heard them on the radio, the banks, oh, we'll deal with people individually. We'll take into account their personal circumstances. Listen, we've heard that nonsense before. And what actually happens is people suffer extreme anxiety, extreme hardship, and are pursued. That cannot happen in a context where the people who are in financial difficulty are in difficulty because actually they have complied with public health measures directed by the government. So the government has to step in and provide that protection and ensure that those breaks for those that cannot manage to meet their mortgage and loan repayments are not persecuted and further punished.
And I want to first of all apologise on behalf of Ministers Donoghue and Fleming, who unfortunately can't be here today. But I want to thank the deputies for raising the important issue that they have. COVID-19 has had a significant impact, we all know, on many households and businesses, and the banks and other regulated lenders did move quickly on foot of the government requests to support their impacted mortgages and other borrowers by putting in place payment breaks across the industry. The latest figures from the Banking and Payments Federation of Ireland indicates that around 89,000 payment breaks were granted to mortgage customers, and breaks were also put in place for a further 32,000 SMEs and 4,000 corporate borrowers. It is to be welcomed that some of the borrowers who had a payment break have now been able to resume loans, their regular loan payments. The Central Bank and BPFI data indicates that over 90% of the borrowers that have finished a payment break have returned to full repayments on the existing term. However, it is important that lenders continue to liaise with and work with borrowers, as Deputy McGrath said, in a position to resume loan repayments, that our flexible repayment arrangements are provided for as necessary. In that regard, the BPFI have indicated that the broad repayment options for borrowers who can recommence loan repayments following a COVID-19 payment break are to return to repayments over the existing term of the mortgage, or to extend the term of the loan to allow the borrower to spread the repayments over longer periods of time. These repayment arrangements are important as they will facilitate and help many borrowers meet their loan commitments at the end of a COVID-19 payment break. But lenders should also fully explain the nature of the new repayment and outline its implications in terms of cost and any other relevant factors. The Minister for Finance is very conscious that many other borrowers continue to be impacted by the economic consequences of COVID-19 and that they are not yet in a position to meet their loan commitments. He is also fully aware of the stress and uncertainty that these borrowers are still facing, and they will continue to need assistance and support from their lenders and indeed from the government. For its part, the government is continuing to provide significant income supports for people who cannot get back to work. Together with grants, credit facilities and other supports are also available to businesses which continue to be affected by the restrictions which are necessary to control the pandemic. Banks and lenders also need to continue to work with and support their customers and borrowers who are still impacted by COVID-19. As deputies will be aware, the Taoiseach, the Minister for Public Expenditure and Reform and the Minister for Finance met with the CEOs of the retail banks and the BPFI on Monday, and that point was clearly and strongly made to them, and in fairness to them it was accepted by the lenders as well, as Deputy McGrath has also said. At the meeting, the banks outlined the plans that they have for their customers who will be coming off payment breaks, and they indicated that this engagement is a priority matter for them. They indicated that they will have approximately 2,500 staff actively working on this, and they will seek to work with and understand the individual situation of every borrower and wish to put in place an individual solution for them if and when it's required. They stressed that their focus is on engagement, assessment and solutions for those who are still impacted by the pandemic. The recent change in the EBA guidelines for COVID-19 payment breaks, which the Minister for Finance wishes to emphasise, refers only to the closing date for an application for a COVID-19 break, does not restrict or hinder lenders from agreeing appropriate further support arrangements on a case-by-case basis for borrowers. Indeed, the EBA has made it clear that such continued COVID-19 supports can include further breaks on loan repayments. However, the options will also be available to borrowers at the end of COVID-19 payment break and will be better overall for the borrower. The best individual arrangements can only be found where there is a meaningful engagement by both the lender and the borrower, and the Government is very conscious that that has to be by the lender especially. However, it will be important that lenders now live up to the commitments that they have made to the government, and indeed, much more importantly, to their customers, who are still experiencing genuine difficulty. In that regard, I welcome the statement by the Deputy Governor of the Central Bank, where he said that the Central Bank, which is the statutory regulator of the banks and other lenders, and which is also the body that has prime responsibility for protecting the consumer of financial services, will intensify its engagement with lenders to ensure that they are engaging effectively and meaningfully and providing the appropriate post-payment break to borrowers who need it.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you.
So the government policy is to rely on the goodwill of the banks to be humane towards lenders who are in borrowers who are in financial difficulty. That is pathetic. I mean, to call it naive would just be a gross understatement. I mean, remember what these banks have done to borrowers who got in trouble as a result of the last financial crash. They harassed them, they harangued them, they put them through the ringer. People tried to engage with the banks. Those banks would come into the Finance Committee and say, oh yes, we're being very reasonable, we're very open to engagement. In reality, they were hounding, harassing, dispossessing people where they could. These are the same banks, by the way, who are part owners of the Debenhams consortium, who dumped 1,000 Debenhams workers on the scrap heap and are allowing them to be treated in the most contemptible way. So the government's policy is just to let them at it. That is not a fair policy or an acceptable policy to protect music workers, events workers, taxi drivers, people in the tourism and transport, all sorts of other areas who've lost income and employment because of government measures. You need to do more for them.
Thanks, Lascion Corla. Well, deputies, the first thing that the government wanted to do for everybody who had any interaction with any financial institution was to protect their income. Not in the same context of the way Deputy O'Murroch, who might be more familiar with it than most deputies would be in the House, that was happened in Northern Ireland. The government here have protected in excess of 1.3 million people, both through the pandemic unemployment payment and the temporary wage subsidy scheme. Now, Deputy Boyd Barrett might say that, that the government policy is just to sit back and do nothing. Over the last number of months, the government has done absolutely everything in its power and beyond what most European Union countries have done to protect people in the first instance with their income and then protect their job. Because in protecting their job, it's protecting their ability to make sure that they're able to make all payments that are within their scope, particularly their day-to-day living expenses. And I think maybe the other jurisdiction on this island might learn an awful lot from what has happened on this side of the border. And in your, if you have any correspondence, Deputy O'Murroch, you might like to pass on what the government in the South has done. And Deputy McGrath, you're absolutely right in relation to the stresses that people are under. And that's why the Taoiseach, the Ministers for Finance, Public Expenditure and Reform, have engaged not only in the last week, but on a continuous basis through their officials in the Departments of Finance, Public Expenditure and Reform and Enterprise, with all of the CEOs of all of the banks. Because without, and Deputy Boyd Barrett might choose to not recognise it, you do need a functioning banking sector, Deputy, in order for there to be a functioning business sector. Now, I know you might want to nationalise them all and turn it into some sort of Cubana bank, but in real terms, that doesn't work anywhere other than the only two countries in the world where that works is North Korea and Cuba. And I don't think realistically that the people of Dunleary would advocate for, Kim Jong, Boyd Barrett to be, policies to be advocated. So the government is committed. The government is committed to working with borrowers and lenders and everybody else, because this country is in a financially precarious position, as are other European countries. But coming in without flippant throwaway comments in the hope that you get a few airlines or a few lines in the paper really is doing nothing for the people at the end of the day who want to keep their jobs.
Thank you. We have 3 more topical issues now. Minister and TDs, I'd ask for your cooperation. Thank you.